Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this special Planning and Development Council meeting. And Madam Clerk, I'd like to have you name the regrets for this evening.
Yes, we have regrets from Councillor Giddings and Councillor Khan.
Thank you. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Thank you. There is. Councillor Adams.
I'd like to declare an interest in item C1 as my spouse's employer, TDL Group, which operates Tim Hortons, has an interest in that particular matter.
All right, thank you. I wonder if I could have a mover and seconder to resolve in a committee of the whole. Councillor Lapworth and Councillor Grant, thank you very much. All in favor? Opposed, if any? We're now resolved in the Committee of the Whole, which is our custom for considering planning and development matters to facilitate conversation with the public. And the first item on our agenda tonight is not really on our agenda tonight. Instead, it's referred from Monday night, and that is the public meeting report and official plan amendment to coordinate the urban design policies with the new Livable by Design manual. And our planning director, Ms. Dana Anderson, is going to lead off the presentation for this item.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, members of council. I'm delighted this evening to introduce to you this item, which is found at page 59 of the previous agenda from Monday. And just a quote from the Livable Oakville plan: the town is committed to achieving a high standard of urban design and architectural quality to provide an innovative and diverse urban form that promotes a sustainable, dynamic, and livable environment. And the item before you tonight, the Livable by Design project, emulates that objective. Just a little under 3 years ago, the town's Livable Oakville plan was approved. And in the last 2 years, we have been working on the In-Zone project, which is one of the major projects to implement Livable Oakville. And during that time, you may recall that we developed urban design guidelines specifically for our stable residential areas. And during that time, we completed the in-zone bylaw that was approved in February, this past February, by Council. And you may also recall that during the presentation on in-zone, there were some issues related to controls and impacts and design that could not be addressed through in-zone by way of zoning regulations. They could only be addressed through some of the forthcoming urban design policies and requirements. And the Livable by Design manual and policies, which you'll hear from Christina Tizard on this evening, provides for those strong, clear urban design guidelines for development within the town. This manual and the associated policies implements the Livable Oakville plan in terms of objectives and goals for urban design. And it complements the in-zone bylaw. It, in essence, completes the package. Livable by Design is a very important project for this council. Being completed, it's one of the major projects under Vision 2057, providing strong design policies and guidance. It makes it very clear what this town's expectations are for design in development. The approach to the Livable by Design manual and policies has been similar to all of our other approaches and projects. It's evidence-based, and the policies have been formulated through extensive research and analysis and with public consultation. The resulting document and policies are reflective of comprehensive work by our in-house urban design team and our urban planners. Again, I'm proud to say that it's a made in Oakville manual and policies for the town of Oakville. And I'd now like to pass over to Christina Tizard, who will walk you through a presentation on the design manual and policies.
Christina, I have to say that as the manager of our urban design, I've been very impressed with your work to date, and this report, I'm really looking forward to your presentation. Everyone who's read it, I'm sure, is impressed.
Thank you.
Away you go.
Okay. Well, thank you for allowing us to bring the report forward this evening. Mayor Burton and members of council, on behalf of the urban design section, I'm bringing forward this evening 2 documents. The first, let's see if I can, is the Livable by Design manual, and it's entitled The Urban Design Direction for Oakville. It's part A of the design manual. It is a comprehensive and high-level document that provides design direction for development, And we anticipate that it visually articulates the design objectives and policies of the Livable Oakville Plan. The second item brought forward this evening is a proposed official plan amendment to Section 6 of the Livable Oakville Plan. It seeks to provide greater clarity and consistency to the current policies, as well as introduce policies emerging out of the research that we conducted for the manual. Tonight, we will be presenting and providing background on the manual and the proposed official plan amendment. And through this meeting, there's opportunities for delegations to bring forward their comments or concerns. Staff is not seeking a decision on the materials presented tonight. We will be returning at a future meeting with a recommendation report, likely the May 12th meeting. So in terms of context, the project was undertaken to create an implementation tool for Section 6 of the Livable Oakville Plan, as Dana has outlined at the outset of this presentation. And that plan really elevated urban design to an integral position by preserving and creating a livable community. Out of this the Livable Oakville Plan, the design document sets the direction for development and illustrates expectations based on the policy direction. It provides a starting point for discussion with applicants that can facilitate achieving context-specific design solutions. And as Dana had mentioned, the project was undertaken concurrent with the in-zone project that was brought forward this past February. This project also implements the Livable Oakville Plan. Together, staff on both projects shared research that informed each other's work. And it's important to note the differences between the two projects. Where the zoning bylaw establishes regulations for the use, location, and form of development, the Urban Design Manual provides qualitative description of the desired form and feel of our urban landscape. And out of the Livable by Design Manual, staff identified necessary modifications to Section 6 of the Livable Oakville Plan, whether that was to provide for greater clarification or consistency, reducing conflicts, strengthening the intent, or bridging gaps that had been identified through some of the earlier work. And those will be identified and discussed a bit later in this presentation. In terms of the Urban Design Manual, when it's completed, it will consist of 3 distinct sections, providing design direction at the macro level or the high level down to the micro level or site level. The first is the Part A, which is the subject of this presentation. It consists of guiding principles and detailed design direction. The document will be applied to public improvements and development on land south of Dundas Street and north of the 407. Of note, we have a separate design document that applies to North Oakville development that was completed in 2009 as part of the North Oakville planning initiatives. The second component is the Part B, and will be assembled with a series of documents that will provide detailed design direction for either specific districts or locations, such as Midtown or the Trafalgar Road corridor, 2 projects that have been brought before this council for discussion in the past, or for specific land uses, such as the guidelines that we have for drive-through facilities or the stable residential communities that was completed last year. This section we anticipate will be built over time as new documents are added and new interests or themes are researched. The final part is Part C. It will contain site development standards, which will be predominantly used through the site plan process. Staff will continue the research and intend to have a draft document available for consultation by the end of this year. To provide a brief overview of the project, it was completed in-house by urban design and planning staff. We analyzed the Livable Oakville Plan policies, assessed the direction provided by various master plans and studies that have been completed by our own department and other departments. We evaluated the comments that we currently provide on development applications to identify themes and trends. We modeled various development scenarios to test the results, and this was concurrent with our participation in the in-zone project. And we researched and reviewed design documents from other municipalities. We were analyzing the themes that they were covering and whether this direction was appropriate for the Oakville context. And if it was, we were able to bring it forward and incorporate it. So based on this background work, staff drafted sections and sourced images to illustrate the design direction. The work resulted in Part A of the Livable by Design Manual, entitled Urban Design Direction for Oakville. This 70-page document is intended as a living document, with the potential for additional sections and/or new images added to supplement and further describe the desired end result. Our intent is the document will reside on the town's website in a digital format for ease of access and use. The intended users of the document include town council and committees when assessing development proposals or capital projects, town staff, and external agencies, using it as an evaluation tool when reviewing applications and when making design-related decisions on capital projects. Used by the development industry to understand the expectations that the town has for development, as it clearly outlines those expectations. And for the public as a reference tool or a reference document that illustrates the benefits of urban design in our community. To start, staff developed 6 guiding principles that would set the tone and for the design direction. They include sense of identity, compatibility, connectivity, sustainability, legacy, and creativity. These principles are based on key themes that represent a livable community, and these themes are identified throughout the Livable Oakville Plan. These principles will also be used as points of reference when developing Part B design documents. In terms of an overview of the contents, the first section sets the direction. It describes the purpose and the policy context, outlines the guiding principles and implementation. The second section provides design direction for the public realm, for aspects such as streetscapes, gateways, urban squares, and public art. The third section is focused on built form, and we've organized it really based on height and use. So we've looked at tall and mid-rise buildings, and the direction there is regardless of the use, so whether it's a single use such as residential or office, or a mixture of uses. And the second is low-rise, where we divided it into non-residential, such as commercial, employment, community institutional, and residential buildings. And the focus there is really to multi-unit, whether it's condominium buildings or townhouses, as we have detached dwellings covered within our design guidelines for stable residential communities. And the split, or the divide between tall, mid-rise, and low-rise, we saw tall buildings as anything greater than 12 stories, mid-rise between 5 and 12 stories, and low-rise 4 and below. And the final section is site development, such as parking, landscaping, service and loading areas. And these topics will actually set the framework for the Part C manual as the site plan or the site development standards manual. The next 3 slides are sample spreads from the design document. And I hope that you note that there's a balance of text and images that help to communicate the expectations for design and development within our community. Wherever possible, staff sourced images from local or regional examples. And so I've provided here an example from the public realm. The focus here is streetscapes. The next is built form with the low-rise non-residential buildings as the sample. And finally, site development. And here we're providing you the text and images for the pedestrian connections. As a result of the project, the research and the work completed on the manual project, staff determined that an official plan amendment was necessary to accompany the design manual. The amendment seeks to achieve clarity in the intent and the direction of the policies, eliminate conflicts, provide consistency in the design direction within the manual, propose new policies that bridge identified gaps, and provide policy direction related to implementing the manual. The proposed OPA is focused on the policies in Section 6 of the plan and not beyond. This table demonstrates some of the changes to the structure of Section 6 within the Livable Oakville Plan. On the left column, we've provided the subsections that are within the current plan, and on the right column, the proposed modifications. And really, they're limited to those first 3, 6.3 to 6.5, which are new subheadings that we've introduced into the plan. And the next 2 pairs, essentially where we identified current subsections and divided them now into individual subsections. So for example, under the current document, we have pedestrian and vehicular circulation under 6.8 access and circulation, but now we've divided it into 2, and the same for lighting and signage. I've also provided a sample of the official plan amendment table that we've included within the bylaw, and it's Appendix A within the report. And it identifies the item number, the current section, and a description of the proposed changes. So for example, items 12 and 13 are new policies that are being brought forward under the section of streetscapes. Items 14 and 15 are policies that were existing within the Livable Oakville Plan. We're now relocating them either to a new section or a renumbered section, and we've also incorporated revisions where necessary. And item number 16 is in fact a deleted policy, and in this case, we were able to incorporate the text into another policy, so the direction has been retained, but located where it may be better suited. Not included in this sample are instances where a single policy was divided into two or more, or where two related policies were combined into a single statement. Of note, the areas where new policies were added include under our general policies, mostly related to implementation, under public realm by adding streetscapes and complete streets, and built form, where we wanted to incorporate language that related to sense of identity, compatibility, and sustainability. Related to consultation, for the design manual specifically, in October of 2012, we had an early draft. It was text only, and we were able to circulate it out to staff in various town departments for their feedback. And the goal there was really to identify gaps in our work, as well as any potential conflicts with documents that they have produced or were in the works. In June and July of 2013, a refined text-only draft was posted on the project website, and it was available for public review and feedback. Consultants and the development industry were advised of its availability, and we did receive feedback from various groups. The document was also available concurrent with the draft new zoning bylaw. So again, that package of both implementation tools were out at the same time, and we were getting feedback on both. And in February, we had a final draft, and that consisted of the text and now the images. And it has been available on the project website since February, and we anticipate the feedback, and we've received some feedback rather, in advance of this meeting. In addition to the required public notice, we also emailed about 150 individuals, mostly from consultants or developers, and those indicating interest in the project, to let them know that the document was available both documents were available for review. Specific to the official plan amendment, in January, February of this year, we were able to circulate a draft document out to staff in various departments for their feedback. And in March, we did post the proposed OPA on our website, and we were notifying those folks that the project was available on the website and at our offices for public review and feedback. In terms of feedback received to date, based on the June 2013 draft manual, we received feedback and met with consultants, or 3 consultants representing various property owners. The issues raised related more to language associated with implementation, ground floor treatment of buildings in certain locations, and the size of parking courts or surface parking areas. On the draft manual and OPA, we received feedback from 2 consultants representing 4 property owners and 1 business interest to date. While some issues had been resolved between the earlier draft manual and the final draft, some issues remain outstanding. Predominantly, and you may see some similarities there, again, the ground floor facade treatment and the location of principal entrances, the size of parking courts or the surface parking areas, as well as underground utilities and control features. We will be in contact with these parties to discuss their concerns and hopefully bring some resolution to their concerns. In terms of next steps, we hope to receive some feedback presented tonight in addition to what we've received in terms of written correspondence over the last few days. Our goal is to incorporate modifications to both the official plan amendment proposed as well as the design manual where warranted, finalize both of those documents, and our goal is to return to you at next cycle on May 12th with a recommendation report. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available if there are any questions.
Thank you very much for a wonderful report and a great presentation. And we have questions from Councillor Byrd and then Councillor Duddick.
Yeah, thank you very much. You may have touched on my concern or the question with your comments with the last input you've had. I haven't seen that. It has to do with, you talked about streetscape, urban environment, and what have you. I was surprised that there wasn't anything to address I guess, abandoned stores. We had 2 stores downtown right now that appeared, one may be close to or within the new Heritage District. One, that's the one right next to Starbucks downtown, I wanted the name. And there's one just farther up there that have completely boarded the front of the store. And given the importance of streetscape, I couldn't find any policy how to do that or encourage people to not to do that. The building looks like the building currently is, boarded up, an empty store. And quite frankly, that caused, I don't have to go into the merchants, some concern of that we don't have some sort of policy or bylaw to try to discourage people from doing that?
Through your worship, the document really deals with new development or redevelopment activities. It sounds as though it may be more of a property standards issue that wouldn't be covered off in this particular document.
That's what I was looking for. The property standards talks about unsafe buildings. It doesn't talk about unsightly buildings. The building looks different today than it was not occupied than it did occupied. And in fact, normally they put up something in the window saying coming soon or whatever to this. This is the two buildings, and they're right in the downtown, and we have, the town seems to be silent on doing anything about it. And I was asked why not, why we can't do something about it, and if not, why not? So I'll leave that with you. Because of the streetscape, we talk about benches and how they're come back, but the actual stores, which people sort of window shop in, we somehow are silent in how to address that requirement. In the central business district, I guess other areas would be the same, but we've got two boarded up stores, which is unusual, and can't do anything about it. So is this a place where we could talk about that? So when...
Councillor, the staff's answer is that that's really a property standards issue, and I will endeavor to bring before you some proposed changes to property standards to go into unsightliness and not just unsafe, all right? Well, I know that one of them has been boarded up for exactly 10 years.
Less than that. One is, we used to be called the magenta furniture, and it hasn't been 10 years, but it's at least 4 or 5. At least the boards are painted brown.
I think as soon as my wife stopped shopping there, they boarded up, but excuse my effort at levity. Councillor Duddick, perhaps you have a question about the presentation.
Yes, thank you. Given that, pardon me, we recently discussed updating the private tree bylaw. Something that's often concerned me in terms of urban design is capturing stable residential neighborhoods that have considerable mature tree canopy, and how we manage to sort of marry the two issues together. I know you can't prevent somebody from doing something, but try to work with them through the urban design process to sort of steer them in a direction where you can still maintain as best possible the maximum amount of trees that are sort of true to that neighborhood. Quite often we hear from residents, why would somebody buy in a neighborhood that is predominantly mature trees and then clear them out and then put in something that's totally incompatible?
Through you, Your Worship, through the design guidelines for stable residential neighborhoods, we do have a section, Section C, which again follows a very similar format of going from the macro level to the micro. In the third section on site development, we do have some language in there that does speak to the retention of mature trees, retaining those within the site design. But the limitations, I would say, of that particular document, it's where it's applied. So it's used when an application is going through committee of adjustment, but I think it's more speaking to the built form in those instances. And we also use it for any residential, detached residential project that comes through the site plan process. So we are able to apply it through those instances. And we also encourage those that just need to come in for a building permit in order to erect their home to be able to reference that document as well. And so we really did make that distinction between the stable residential neighborhoods and everything else when it comes to this particular document. However, the stable residential neighborhood guidelines do form part of this overarching umbrella as a Part B document.
That's what I was thinking. It was going to be captured in that. Thank you.
Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. When I look at it, I'm just trying to understand why we are using the word should so often if you go through the items instead of shall. And especially in a couple, like if you look at item 14, gateways, it used to be shall, gone to should. If you look at item 50, was shall, now should. 51, shall, not should. and almost everything else is should, or encouraged. Why are we weakening from a shall to a should, first of all, in those areas?
Through your worship, it relates to the items within the official plan amendment that was brought forward. And we found in some instances, when we were developing the Livable Oakville plan, staff prepared a technical paper that formed a lot of the basis for those policies. And it was really through the work through the Livable by Design project that we were able to delve a bit deeper in terms of research and really have an opportunity to relook at those policies and to determine whether or not we were going in the right direction. And so when we looked at some of those shalls, for example, with gateways or with, unfortunately I don't have the document, but maybe with public art or some of those other ones, when we took a look, it's really, can we really say shall? And so we were looking at, there was a better way from a design perspective to approach it with the language should. And in some of those instances, the work is actually being conducted by the town in terms of the public realm, as opposed to the development community. So in some instances, when we did review them and look at them a lot closer, they really were more appropriate as shoulds as opposed to shalls.
Well, item 14 is a very good example, and I think you're aware, you mentioned it. The gateway, we used to say, shall create a sense of entrance and arrival through a well-designed built form. Now we don't need that anymore, is what I read here. You should. You don't have to, but you should. It's that gateway that I think is important, and I'm just trying to think of why we've weakened it.
Oops, sorry. It was through that review process that we determined that we could go from shall to should.
So it's not as important. The gateway isn't that important then?
I don't think that was the intent.
Well, okay, what does should mean versus shall? And maybe that's better. Give me the definition of what should means versus what shall means.
Should refers to direction, whereas shall is a mandatory.
So it's not mandatory. Okay. Then there was 50 and 51 also on your items. Yeah, I really appreciate how you laid it out. It makes it easy to understand. Landscaping, it used to be shall design, like for design for landscaping, and now all you should do now is instead got rid of the shall. We should now. And for landscaping.
Christina, let's, the planning director would like to add a word here.
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Elgar, I did want to just identify, and I have a copy of the Livable Oakville plan, or else Christina could read this out. But those terms are defined in the plan, and shall means the policy is mandatory. So there's no question it must be completed in accordance with the policy requirements. Should means, and this is quoting, that the policy is directive. It requires compliance unless proven otherwise on good planning grounds. So it's still required unless proven otherwise.
Well, I appreciate what you said. I would have sure liked to have seen shall in there. Thank you.
So, Councillor, if I put together all the explanations that have been offered here, what I heard was most of these activities are in the public realm and undertaken by the town rather than by applicants. And we're still bound to do it unless there's a good reason not to. And if we used shall, then even if there was a good reason not to, we'd be caught in a corner where we're forcing ourselves to do something that actually wasn't a good idea. And that was the nature, they're saying, of their analysis for making these changes. So I think what we really have to do as a council is we have to look at the things that have been changed from shall to should, and ask ourselves if in every possible instance we would want to be compelled by our own act, our own bylaw, because it's a bylaw basically, to absolutely do it, or do we want the flexibility where conditions don't really recommend it to depart from it, understanding that it's required unless we decide that it doesn't make good sense. So the flexibility is to us, and the requirement is still there unless we find a reason not to.
Well, I hear what you're saying. My concern is the gateway approach. I really have trouble. I think the gateway is so important everywhere throughout Oakville that I would have rather had shall
So
other than should.
In the planning director's explanation, you still have it unless we decide not to.
Well, that's a good,
So you haven't actually lost anything. All you've gained as council is some flexibility.
well, thank you for that. We'll see.
All right. Any other questions? Do we have registered delegations, Madam Clerk?
No.
Are there any members of the public with information for staff or council on this matter? Is there a member of council who'd like to give me the recommended motion? Councillor Knoll? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? The information is received. The public is invited to continue to dialogue with staff. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
I would now draw your attention to the public hearing item listed as number 1 on our agenda, the public hearing for the zoning bylaw amendment for Dundas Trafalgar at 3075 Trafalgar. And if you'll bring your attention to Tricia Collingwood, you will be edified. You'll be reminded what you read in the report.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Excuse me. The purpose of this report is to introduce the planning application for Dundas Trafalgar, Inc. in conjunction with the required statutory public meeting. This presentation is only dealing with the blocks that are fronting along Trafalgar, directly onto Trafalgar. These blocks were identified previously as reserved in the original application that was submitted in December of 2012. The applicant has appealed the zoning bylaw and draft plan of subdivision application submitted in 2012 to the Ontario Municipal Board. As noted by my report, there are no decisions to be made at this time, and the report is to be received by council. The property is located at 3075 Trafalgar Road at the northeast corner of Dundas Street and Trafalgar Road. The property has 940 meters of frontage along Trafalgar Road and 303 meters of frontage along Dundas Street. The site area for this application is approximately 5 acres. You can see the 3 blocks that were brought forward with this application right along Trafalgar Road. And the outline for the entire property is, oh, hold on, is here. Sorry, I wasn't done with that. The east tributary EM4 of the East Morrison Creek traverses the property from east to west, at which point it meanders across Trafalgar Road a number of times as it heads to East Morrison Creek and Dundas Street. The region of Halton's Trafalgar Road environmental assessment is underway with the with the intent to construct a multimodal transportation corridor along Trafalgar Road. The North Oakville East secondary plan designates the lands as Trafalgar Urban Core and Natural Heritage System. The proposed plan of subdivision by Dundas Trafalgar Incorporated contains the Trafalgar Urban Core area and NHS area components identified in the master plan excerpt shown on this slide. The Trafalgar Urban Core area is intended to provide the creation of a major node, a dense mixed-use development that is pedestrian and transit-oriented. The mix of uses is a permitted range from employment, commercial, residential, institutional, and cultural within a medium and high-density built form. The lands are zoned existing development in the North Oakville zoning bylaw. The applicant is proposing to rezone the properties from existing development to Trafalgar Urban Core, the TUZ zone, but requests the inclusion of general urban uses, stacked townhouse dwellings, within the TUC blocks adjacent to Trafalgar Road. The intent of the TUC designation is not to have low to medium densities within the body of the blocks, but more on the edge of the TUC zones that are adjacent to the general urban area zones to allow for more of an appropriate transition from the higher density uses to the less denser neighborhood uses. Staff will continue to work with the applicant on the appropriate densities, uses, and built form along Trafalgar Road. The proposed development, as originally submitted in 2012, and you can see I've highlighted the 3 blocks that are submitted as part of this application. But the proposed development of the entire property includes residential uses, commercial and mixed-use buildings, roads, private lanes, a park, school, natural heritage system, and stormwater management pond. The subject blocks of this application include medium and high-density mixed-use apartment form buildings, as well as the stacked townhouses I mentioned earlier. The following matters have been identified for consideration as part of the complete analysis of the application: conformity with the North Oakville East Secondary Plan, the Region's Trafalgar Road environmental assessment, the east tributary to East Morrison Creek, the alignment for that creek, urban design, proposed built form and densities within the Trafalgar Urban Core designation, and servicing allocation. The next steps for this application include the further review and analysis, as well as consultation with review agencies. In conclusion, staff put forward the following recommendation as shown for Council's consideration: that comments from the public with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment application by Dundas Trafalgar Inc. be received.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, we have questions from Councillor Adams and Councillor Byrd. Councillor Adams is first.
Can you go back to the map that you had, I think on, yeah, that one would be fine. I just wanted to ask you about integration of these locations with the adjacent properties, and how does that get taken into consideration during the review process?
Do you have, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, are there specific properties you're referring to?
Well, I think they're the NHS property, which is the corner property. That's kind of the cutout, I think. And then there's the properties that are immediately to the east of these properties. And I want to know how all of them will be, how they will relate to these blocks of land, I guess.
We do have, coming to you in June, I believe, May or June, Council, will be the Shield Bay application, which is the application directly to the east of these lands. The applicants have been working together to bring forward the intent of the master plan. As for the north with the NHS system, that would be protected and reviewed as part of that application that comes forward.
So that, so on this map you can see it better. You can see the corner lots where there's little cutouts from each of the properties, and parts of them are NHS, but parts of them show as if they're
Oh, sorry, I see what you mean.
urban core.
So you're referring to the blocks here, specific to this application.
So the
Yes.
two southern ones have little divots out of them, I'll call it, at the corner.
So this is the alignment of East Morrison Creek now. We are proposing through Trafalgar Road environmental assessment, as well as looking at the best and highest use along Trafalgar Road to maximize that frontage of the roadway. We are working with the applicant to look at the realignment of that creek, which would bring the creek, shift the alignment easterly, just slightly, still on the applicant's property, because the applicant's property comes out like this. So bringing the creek slightly east, it would come down along through here, so it would still sort of be within there, that corridor there. And then it would cross under the road. This is Street B of the application. It would cross under the road. It currently right now proposes to use some of this land here, which is why the block is notched, and then cross Trafalgar Road to connect up with Green Ginger's stormwater pond and block that's over on this side of Trafalgar.
So this stream section, I don't recall what color coding it got, or whether it's a high, medium, or low constraint.
Medium.
Medium, okay. And remind us the definition of medium and what you can do to them.
A medium constraint stream means it is it is appropriate to realign if it's determined that that's the best case for this creek. What we have found through the work with the region on the environmental assessment is this creek crosses through 3 culverts now along Trafalgar Road. Not always the best situation for a creek to go through 3 culverts. With the widening of Trafalgar Road, each of those culverts will be lengthened. It can be, at most times of the year, I guess it can be characterized as a roadside ditch. So therefore, the best and highest use of the Trafalgar blocks is to try to develop those blocks, but maintain the function of the creek. We can reduce the number of culverts, bring it to the east of these high-density blocks, cross it, remove 1 culvert. Sorry, my mouse isn't working. Remove the 1 culvert that is along up here, I think, and then it crosses again. Remove 1 of the culverts of Trafalgar Road and use just this one to tie in to the creek and the stormwater function on this side. There still will be the culvert to the south end of Trafalgar. That will still need to function because we will have some stormwater and other needs for that culvert. But essentially, we're reducing it by 1 culvert, which is better for the creek.
The stormwater management pond, that's the circle in the southeast corner there,
Yes,
does that flow out through the southern culvert?
it will.
Okay. Now, in a previous draft or a previous application, I saw a version of things where instead of a perfect circle, the stormwater management pond at the south end was more rectangular, I guess, and it generally followed the back lot line of the southernmost block here. Is that
Yes.
still in works? Or
Yes.
Where does that stand?
So the the pond is more of a square rectangular shape now, as we're looking at it. It is lined by residential uses, so higher density to medium density uses on the west side. The other 2 sides will be medium density uses as it moves into the general urban blocks. And then we have commercial blocks along Dundas to the south of that pond.
Okay. I have one other stream of questions, and it's relating to the height of the various blocks. Can you describe that better? Because the diagram that we have is not very easy to read.
So the new blocks that are in right now, they have, we're still waiting on definitive heights from the applicant. I know somebody here from the applicant is in attendance, I believe. But we are waiting on information. When I inquired about the types of heights that we have, they have apartment 1s, apartment 2s, and stacked townhouses proposed in these blocks. Apartment 1s being the highest, I believe, could be anywhere from 12 to 20 stories in height. I think 20 was sort of the maximum. They were maybe looking at 18 more as the average for that range, but 12 to 20. And then the apartment 1s were somewhere between 6 and 12 or 6 and 14.
On page 3 of the report, I see apartment 1, 4 to 6 stories, and apartment 2, 9 to 15 stories, and with an asterisk that I think relates to heights are subject to change through site plan process.
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah, they
those
have
correct, or?
indicated that they might sorry, I had apartment 1 and apartment 2 mixed up. They have indicated that apartment 2 could go up to 20 stories.
They have indicated.
They have, yeah.
And is, I believe that's consistent with the bylaws and the planning, is that correct?
Yes.
So the numbers that you see on page 3 is what they're proposing, not necessarily what would be allowed.
It's what they've indicated to me. We don't have anything in from them, and probably won't until maybe further on in the site plan process, but they are intending to stick with the intent of the master plan.
So what they're applying for, what they're seeking is consistent with what we've previously planned in our secondary planning and official planning?
It's through me, Mr. Mayor, it is consistent except for the allowances in the zoning bylaw for the general urban uses. So requesting stacked towns in these 3 blocks would not be consistent with the secondary plan.
And what arguments are they making for that?
I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I do believe there was some concern over market.
Okay, and our staff and yourself will be reviewing that consideration as it goes forward?
Yes, as I noted in my presentation, we fully intend to work with them more on the built form and the densities in these three blocks in particular.
Okay, I look forward to that review. Thank you.
So Councillor, just to help staff, you're looking for achievement of the objectives of the secondary plan?
That's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Byrd, I believe you're next.
Yeah, I think Councillor Adams asked one of my concerns. I'm familiar with Minto from their work up in Ottawa, and 'cause they were a large builder up there along with Thomas Astley, Bob Campo, Terron, and Mattamy. But around here, I'd like Councillor Adams, I'd like to see what we're talking about. Is there any development that Minto have done close by that we can actually look at? We're going to get more of this and less of that we can, so I can see, you know, kind of, I got a rough idea what a 20-story building is, but when you call it 4 to 6 stacked townhouses, I'd like to see what those look like.
They do have a development, Gabe might be able to help. They do have a development in Toronto that they've said that we could come down and visit. I think Minto is more of the high-rise development, more of the urban area high-rise development. They've teamed
Right.
with Branthaven Homes for some more of the general urban neighborhood type uses. So I think there's a bit of a partnership going on there. Because I'm not sure that Minto typically does that type of
Yeah, well, I'm
building.
familiar with Ottawa, and they're primarily an apartment building.
But we could get you the names of the developments.
Some
and-
sort of thing, and maybe even some pictures, save some running
Yeah.
around. And there's also some interesting buildings just going up in Burlington, I hate to say they come back, and around the Walker's Line, Upper Middle Road area with the I think the mixed use underground thing. It almost looks like a new downtown or a streetscape type of thing, and they're building what appears to be mid-rise buildings, 4 to 6 stories with stores on the bottom and whatever it is. I thought they'd made quite frankly, at the Walker's Line and Upper Middle Road intersection there, they'd made I guess 3/4 of a very interesting intersection. And they're, like I thought, caught my eye as being very attractive. So something maybe we consider as an option.
Thank you, Councillor Byrd. Councillor Elger is next, and then we'll return to Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Just a question regarding the creek. Did I hear you correctly that in fact the creek, the medium constraint creek will flow into the stormwater management pond? That's the design? That's what I heard you say.
We're working with we're working with Conservation Halton and the region to determine the what's best for the creek and the new alignment. Bringing it across the road towards the pond, Green Gingers Pond, and then down into, there's more of a sensitive area, wetland area, and then it would connect up to the creek. We're working, like I said, we're working to determine whether or not that's the best thing for the creek.
You're still, okay, you're not decided that it's best to put a creek into a stormwater management
It
pond
hasn't
yet
been
then?
determined yet. That review is still ongoing.
It's still ongoing. Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Councillor, have you already made a determination in that area?
I've got a lot of data on that area. I didn't bring it with me tonight, but I will at the next meeting if you want.
Well, I'm just interested in that councillors give staff a clear idea of where they're coming from. It helps staff.
Well, when we did OPA 198 back a few years ago, a medium constraint creek, I don't recall us saying it was going to go into a stormwater management pond, but I'll have to dig through my tickle trunk of information.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. It does not flow into the stormwater pond. The alignment, trying to figure out how to explain this because I'm not very technically savvy with my creek alignment, but the alignment of the creek does bring it over across the road, and I will confirm with you exactly how and where it goes once it crosses the road.
I really would appreciate that, because I really don't think that medium constraints, we decided we were putting them into a stormwater management pond at all. But I stand to be corrected, Mr. Mayor.
So your interest is just to make sure that we're observing the IAR classification of creeks. Commissioner?
I actually think that Tricia Culling was just the issue quite well. The standards or requirements of the North Oakville are not that we put very valuable creeks into stormwater ponds, but I'm sure she'll show you an alignment that it runs in that direction, but not into the pond itself. So we're following the EIR requirements and the subwatershed studies through all of these reports.
So
Really
perhaps we just had a terminology issue there. Councillor Adams, you wanted to go again?
Thank you. On Councillor Elgar's issue, which I'll just pick up on again, it is listed as one of the matters to be considered, and so I fully expect that all of these issues will be better explored in the recommendation report. The third one being the East Tributary EM4 to East Morrison Creek alignment, which I think is what we're talking about here. So,
Through you,
I
Mr.
agree that that's an important issue to ensure that we're following what we originally said we were going to do with the creek there. And the other thing I just want, because we were talking about sort of direction to staff on issues to review, I brought up the issue of the integration with the adjacent properties, and I hope that we'll consider that in more detail when the report comes back. I know we've got issue, in terms of the matters to be considered, you do have conformity with the NOESP, and you do have the urban design, and you've got the proposed built form as an issue there. So those are all things that I can I read them as being integration issues, but perhaps more explicitly we could talk about the integration and how these properties will match with the ones to the east particularly, I think is an issue. Because I've seen some of the design work on the southeast corner there, and I don't recall exactly where the boundary line was between the two properties. So making sure that the two will work properly. I know there were some questions around ability to have walk-through traffic or pedestrian traffic through, and preserving that right, or that if an easement is required, for example, to allow that to happen, then we should probably consider those issues.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay.
Any other councillors? Shall I go to the public? Are there any members of the public with information for council or staff on this matter? One, two, going twice, going thrice. I'll confine it to table and look for a motion. Councillor Adams moves the recommendation, which is to receive the comments. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Council, that turns us to next item, which is the zoning bylaw amendment and plan of subdivision, King's Christian Collegiate and Davis Minority Home Corporation, 528 Burnhamthorpe Road West. And it looks like Trish again.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. The purpose of this report is to introduce the planning applications for King's Christian Collegiate, as well as the Davis Minority 2A lands zoning bylaw amendment in conjunction with the required statutory public meeting. This presentation does not deal with the site plan matters that are currently before the Ontario Municipal Board. As noted by my report, there are no decisions to be made at this time, and the report is to be received by council. The King's Christian Collegiate property is located at 528 Burnhamthorpe Road West and west of Neagawa Boulevard. The property has 254 meters of frontage along Burnhamthorpe Road, 125 meters of frontage along Neagawa Boulevard, and a total site area of approximately 3.8 hectares. Burnhamthorpe Road and Neagawa Boulevard are under the jurisdiction of Halton Region. King's Christian Collegiate operates a private school on the subject lands. The property abuts the Davis Minority 2A lands just to the south of it. Davis Minority lands are at 3079 Neagawa Road, which recently received draft plan of subdivision approval for the development of a residential subdivision consisting of 52 semi-detached dwellings and 70 townhouse units. The King's Christian Collegiate and the Davis Minardi 2A lands are within the Neagawa Urban Core area. The intent of this core area is to permit the provision of convenience commercial, institutional, and employment uses to serve adjacent neighborhoods, as well as related residential development. The zoning for the King's Christian Collegiate lands are existing development in the North Oakville zoning bylaw. The purpose of this application is to bring forward both a draft plan of subdivision and a zoning bylaw amendment. The plan of subdivision will create two blocks of land to accommodate townhouse dwellings fronting onto Old Fourth Line. If approved, these blocks of land will be registered together with the adjacent Davis Minardi 2A subdivision to facilitate a land exchange. King's Christian proposed to increase the size of the school and previously submitted a site plan application identifying a number of zoning bylaw deficiencies. The applicant applied to the Committee of Adjustment for variances to the existing development zone to be allowed for the proposed school expansion. These variances were refused and subsequently appealed to the Ontario Municipal Board. The comprehensive rezoning of these lands is intended to address these zoning issues. The zoning bylaw does not address issues such as the sports field lighting. Those matters are dealt with through the municipal bylaw. The site plan for the sports field lighting came in February of 2013 and has been appealed to the Ontario Municipal Board for non-decision. The applicant is proposing to rezone the properties from existing development to Neighborhood Urban Core 3 and Neighborhood Urban Core 25 to bring the existing private school and proposed additions into conformity with the North Oakville zoning bylaw, and to permit the addition of 10 townhouse dwelling units. This isn't working in this corner. To permit the addition of those dwelling units within the proposed blocks at the southwest corner of the site. The intent is to merge the newly created blocks for the proposed townhouses with the recently approved Davis Minardi 2A draft plan of subdivision to the south. The previously approved zoning bylaw for the Davis Minardi 2A lands has also been brought forward to clarify regulations that were already passed at Council in December of 2013 and to include a zoning schedule at a future Council meeting to the site-specific zoning bylaw that reflects the proposed changes to the site. The following matters have been identified for consideration as part of the complete analysis for this application: conformity with the North Oakville East Secondary Plan, the integration with the red line revision application for the Davis Minardi 2A lands to the south, and servicing connections. Next steps include further review and analysis, as well as consultation with agencies. A public information meeting was held on April 2nd for these applications. In conclusion, staff put forward the following recommendation as shown above: that comments from the public with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision applications for King's Christian Collegiate and the zoning bylaw amendment application for Davis Minardi Home Corporation be received. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions, Council? Are there members of the public with information for Council or staff on this file? Not to put you on the spot, Mr. Chalisky, but do you represent this file? If you do, I have a question. If you'd be kind enough to consider a question. I thought it would be beneficial for the public if you wanted to give an explanation of what you're trying to achieve with these, let me call it these changes.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Over the last couple of years, King's Christian has been proceeding on one tact on their lands. We've been proceeding for the development of our lands. We've had many a discussion over the years, both of us trying to, I'd say we started to protect our interests, and through the ongoing discussions, we came to the realization that there was a better opportunity if we sort of worked together on this to create or develop this entire block of land as one piece together. And through those discussions, it made a lot of sense to do a land exchange which consolidated the recreational facilities on the King's Christian lands, allowed their expansions, and allowed us to complete the development of the east side of Fourth Line all at one time.
So would I be correct in perceiving this as an effort by two landowners to minimize contradictions between the development of their two pieces of land by moving uses around so that otherwise incompatible or difficult uses wouldn't impinge on each other? Is that what's going on here?
It's that, plus it resolves through this process the outstanding appeals that King's Christian currently has on the Ontario Municipal Board.
Thank you. I find that very useful information. Thanks for bringing that.
You're welcome.
Are there any other members of the public with possible information for council? Then I'll look for a motion. Councillor Knoll moves the recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that does carry. And that brings us now to item number 3, the lower fourth development, pendant developments and lower fourth development proposed zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision. And if you'll give your attention to Mr. Charles, the report you read will be summarized for you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is a statutory public meeting for a draft plan of subdivision and a zoning bylaw amendment for the lower fourth development's pendant development, also known as Preserve Phase 2. The whole of the land holdings is located on the north side of Dundas between 6th Line and an existing plan of subdivision which is currently built and occupied just east of Neagawa. The location of the subdivision, the second phase of the whole land holdings that we're looking at tonight is identified here. Excuse me. The subdivision to the west was registered a little while ago, and you'll see in the bottom corner some of the street names, which is the existing subdivision which has been registered and is currently under construction. That was registered in late 2013. You can see it ghosted in the lower right-hand corner of the overall subdivision being shown here. So the subdivision proposes various blocks for residential purposes. It also includes a neighborhood park as well as an elementary school block, a natural heritage system, and an urban core block, which could house a mix of uses right along Dundas Street. The block that you see right at the corner of what would be the extension of Town Boulevard, right in this location here, that's the existing pump station that Halton Region put in just a little while ago. It is proposed through this subdivision that 16-mile drive would extend from subdivision to the west through the first phase of development as well as the Timpson subdivision right at 6th Line to essentially connect Neagawa to 6th Line. North Park Boulevard would do the same in time once the northern part of the Timpson subdivision would proceed. As well, through this subdivision proposal, the Munns Creek is intended to be preserved and enhanced. The area of this proposal includes neighborhood area designation, natural heritage system, and Dundas urban core. An elementary school site and a neighborhood park are also identified on the official plan schedule. At this time, no amendments to the secondary plan are required to implement the proposal. The North Oakville Master Plan provides some greater clarity to the distribution of land uses identified in the secondary plan, including a potential street layout. The secondary plan does provide some flexibility in that proposals do not have to strictly adhere to the master plan as long as the intent is maintained. With this application, the intent is to maintain the intended location for the school and the park, the location of Munns Creek, the stormwater management pond, as well as the Dundas urban core block. As comments from the various public agencies and towns and town departments come in, some further refinement to the layout may occur. The existing zoning that applies to the site is existing development. The zoning being proposed utilizes zones which are currently found in the North Oakville zoning bylaw, subject to some minor modifications as is noted in Appendix B to the staff report. Just in terms of next steps, staff will continue to evaluate agency and public comments with the intent of providing council with a final recommendation in the very near future. And council should be aware, it may be on your desk, you may have received it earlier, a letter that did come from the Director of Education and the Chair of the Board from Halton District School Board in recognizing the need for the school block as part of this particular application. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Council, do any of you have questions? Are there any members of the public with information or questions? Mr. Charles, I have a question. If you could go back to the official plan map, the other one, just before, after this one. So I'm looking at the pale green Village Square features, and I'm wondering, I think I see one here on the east.
Mm-hmm.
Can you paint a picture for us as to what we'll see there? Is that a patch of grass? Is that a gazebo? I mean, what happens in those village squares of the North Oakville secondary plan?
Certainly. So through the process of looking at all of these lands and working with the applicant, what was identified was the potential to take that village square and actually slide it a little bit to the south. And I'll go back to the subdivision that was registered last year, and you'll see that that right now, identifying the master plan, is roughly in this area. We actually slid that all the way down to this location here. And the reason we put it down there was because we wanted to better identify a village square and the significance of that village square in keeping with where the Kading House was originally, which had just been a little bit to the east of this. So the idea with this village square is actually to remember, reflect on the Kading House and the significance of that farmstead in North Oakville. So therefore, there's going to be some elements which are going to be integrated into the village square specific to this location, including, because of the apple orchard that was part of the Kading farmstead, there's a planting plan that has been devised for the village square, which in essence echoes what that orchard looked like in the past.
So will there be, I mean, help me picture it more. Like, I'm going to see the Kading House, I'm going to see some apple trees or something like that. Are there pathways? Is there, I mean, what's around it? What could you liken it to? What should I expect?
This particular village square, which identify there in the first phase, it has units where, I don't remember the exact number of units, but they're townhouse units which are fronting onto the village square. So they create the backdrop to that square. It's around an acre in size. There's a play structure that's been designed into it, as well as an open space, the benches, pathways, yes. The idea being that it connects the promenade, which is right adjacent to the stormwater pond, to bring that pathway system up through the village square and then continue to connect that up. Eventually that will go all the way up to North Park Boulevard. There'll be a view of that village square on a north-south axis.
Thank you, that helped me more. I now imagine that it's in its own way and a different way than George's Square, providing a function like George's Square provides.
It does provide that type of function, and as well, in the Davis Marty subdivision, which is just to the west, there is a village square which has been built there. It is, it's functioning, all of the activities are there as part of the square right now. There's a play structure, a shade structure, there's some benches as well, there's an open play area, some plantings, etc. And the idea being that we've seen where there's opportunities for improvement beyond just that village square that we want to incorporate into not just this one to the south, but also just to the east of where Preserve Drive extends farther north on the second village square that was done as part of the subdivision to the east.
Now, if you go back in time with me to when Andres Duaney was, persuading us that the village square was an interesting idea. I don't know why, but I have this memory that these were going to be walk-to areas in a subdivision that, around which there might be various services that would be useful to the residents. Does anybody remember it that way, like me? So, are any of the village squares going to be like the Duaney vision, or are they going to be more like George's Square?
The idea with the village squares, you're quite right, it is to act as that central focus for the community, which is that area where people can come to recreate, whether passive or active, where it's not only easy walk to, but it also forms that more than just a central figure, but it's almost an identifier for that community. So the idea with the southerly one was to try and put it as close to what we've identified as the activity nodes as much as possible. So it's not just more dense in this area, but there's also live works that are being constructed along Preserve Drive, so that it does function as a series of open spaces that all link together that pedestrians can walk to. So the promenade along the storm pond, the live works that are along Preserve Drive, the walkway system into the village square, and how that connects then further north to the natural heritage system, which is past the next phase, the third phase of this area as well. So similarly, we're looking at that exact function for the other subdivisions that we're also working on, whether it's the one that Ms. Collingwood presented with Minto, whether the ones that you'll see before summer with the other Mattamy proposal, really to try and ensure that those village squares are those generators of activity, but also become a destination within the community.
Thank you very much for helping me understand this better. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Knoll.
It's in Councillor Knoll's ward, so I'll let him go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor. Your Worship, through you, I just want to clarify with staff, the Mayor asked for clarification of what would appear or what would be situated in that village square, and he mentioned the Kading House. I just want to clarify, the Kading House is gone. It burned down, so there will not be, the Kading House will not be in situ. Is that's, I would imagine that's the case, correct?
Yes,
Thank you, Councillor. I regret my mischaracterization of it.
Well, it would be great if the Kading House were still there. Unfortunately, it's...
Some reminder of the Kading House,
Yes,
I should have said.
And just a comment, Your Worship. You asked if anybody remembered that. I do remember the Duany-esque experience, and particularly that was one of the things I think I was most excited by, as were a number of the participants in the process. The whole concept of the neighborhood square actually humanizing these subdivisions to something more than just a typical design subdivision with some sort of animation. Because we have one of these so-called squares in Oak Park as an example. The Sawgrass Parkette is essentially one of these neighborhood squares, and essentially what it is a big piece of grass that nobody really uses. And unless you've got something there, and that's what Duany talked about, postal boxes, a mini Tim Hortons, anything like that, I don't know if it's going to achieve the original goal. I'd love to see it happen. I raised this same question when we had I think it was the Argo development that's at 6 Line in Dundas, because that was the first time I saw the very disappointing realization of what a village square is, and it certainly is a real letdown from what we originally talked about in the grand visioning scheme that we undertook like 12 years ago.
Yes, not to put words in your colleague's mouth, but Councillor Grant and I have visited a neighborhood off of 6th Line where it's not quite a village square, but we did find activity problems as well. So it's clearly a tricky thing to do.
Yeah, Morrison Village you're referring to, yeah. Which have been resolved now, just for the record.
Well, yes, I know. The problem's gone. And so is the activity. We also have interventions from Councillor Elgar and Councillor Lapworth. Councillor Elgar?
Yeah, thank you. It's along the same lines as you kicked off a few minutes ago about a village square. There is one just east of Naigawa, maybe that's one you're referring to, the village square, which isn't big enough for kids to even throw a ball. I go back to the vision, and I fully agree. Like maybe we should revisit how big our village squares are. Now, when I go to the plan, I can't see village square even mentioned on here. I see neighborhood center, general urban. Is it open space? Is that the? I've got. I just don't even see village square. It didn't even make the cut for point anything of a hectare.
It's on the official plan overview.
Yeah, but on the draft plan feature, it's not even listed. So I'm just trying to understand how small it really is.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what I was explaining was that the village square, which is on the east side of Munns Creek, identified in the master plan. We took that village square and we slid it down into the first phase. It had a better opportunity to really become a highlight of the community if it was within the first phase. So therefore, it's not located right there. The one that's closest on that side, which is where the village square was shown on the master plan, is a little farther east. It's in a block. There's a second village square there. What this particular subdivision has is the neighborhood park, which is located up at North Park Boulevard, or the extension of North Park Boulevard, in this location here, and the extension of Town Boulevard.
It's 4.29 hectares, or about 10 acres, that neighborhood park. So in this plan, there is a village square though, right? Or there not? Are we, what we're receiving tonight, there is no village square whatsoever?
Correct.
It's slid away, okay.
It slid below there. Counselor Knoll will show you.
Oh, okay, right there.
To use Counselor Adams' term earlier, there's a certain degree of integration going on here. All right, Counselor Lapworth, I think it's your turn.
Urban crawl.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In 1997, there was a piece of land that ran between West Oak Trails and Upper Middle Road, just west of Arborview Drive, that was entitled Neighborhood Park. About 10 years ago, the town elected to change the name from Neighborhood Park to Community Park. And the residents in that area were not aware of the fact that a community park was going to be containing irrigated and lit sports fields, whereas a neighborhood park, the sports fields would neither be irrigated nor lit. Now, my question is this: any prospective purchasers of properties abutting the new community park here in this area when it's built, will they be made aware ahead of time as to exactly, what a community park entails, and that it does provide for irrigated sports fields and lit sports fields?
Counselor, I actually thought I heard Mr. Charles say it was a neighborhood park, but Mr. Charles, why don't you do the clarification?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess the clarification I'm looking for is, are we speaking about the community park, the 16-mile sports complex, which is west of Neagawa, or are we speaking about the neighborhood park, which is identified as part of the proposal?
No, in the proposal, there was a dark green and a light green, one of which was neighborhood, one of which was community, and the very, very light green was the village square.
Correct. So through you, Mr. Mayor, what the official plan identifies here, if my mouse comes back, there's the neighborhood park identified in this location. The community park is on the west side of Neagawa, which is 16-mile sportsplex.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
And Counselor Grant.
Thank you. And for the record, I had no questions about the previous item when I said to you no questions earlier. Seeing how we've covered our disappointment with village squares, I'll just move to the next thing, which I understand that for consideration in future, we're looking at discussion about the integration enhancement of the natural heritage system. Will the Conservation Authority be involved in that, heavily involved? Do you know?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Conservation Authority is always involved in any discussions we have on the natural heritage system, along with our town engineering staff.
It's just when we were talking earlier about the item off of Trafalgar and Ward 6, and there's discussion about moving the creek, I felt a little stabbing pain in my chest. And in here, I'm looking at the way that this creek flows seems to be in a nice sort of wave pattern, and suddenly you move to the proposal for the phasing, and it's been turned into sort of a roadway system. It's been very sort of cut into there like a puzzle, and that I find a little disturbing. So when we talk about enhancing and preserving, it's not really preserving. I just hope that we're enhancing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the idea with Munns Creek, the block that Councillor is speaking to is roughly here. That the idea of preserving is we're preserving the functionality that creek currently holds within its existing system. The idea of enhancing it and the work that we're currently doing and undertaking right now with CH as well as our town engineering staff is the actual channel design of that, so that we can enhance the overall functionality of that stream so that it does better than it is right now.
Okay, thank you. Those are my
All right. Thank you, Council. I'll look for a motion. Councillor Knoll moves the recommendation.
Your Worship, can I don't need to add this to the motion, but if staff could just, when they're doing the final consideration report, if they could maybe bring back some more information on the intent of where we're going with these village squares, and let's have a quick review of where we are and where we're going with them in terms of how we can potentially make them successful, not just simply pieces of grass to cut a couple times a month.
Thank you, Councillor. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Council, we now have our discussion items. The first is a recommendation report, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, Garden Drive Towns, 113, 131 Garden Drive. If you give your attention to Heinz Heck, he will refresh your memory of this report.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, members of council. The report which is before council this evening is a recommendation report regarding an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment, which would have the effect of permitting a development of an 18-unit, 3-story townhouse development. The lands are located on the east side of Garden Drive, between Lake Shore Road and to the south and Rebecca Street to the north. Just in terms of background, in 2005, the town initiated a land use study to reevaluate the land use within the area bounded by Dorval Drive, Maurice Drive, Rebecca Street, and Lakeshore Road. At that time, the area, which was predominantly post-World War II housing stock, was being subject to redevelopment pressure. The intent of the study was to establish an updated vision, land use, and associated policies with public participation to provide guidance for the future redevelopment of these lands. As a result of the study, site-specific policies were incorporated into the official plan. Appendix A of the report provides a detailed summary of the study objectives and the conclusions of the Maurice Drive land area policy study. In terms of the official plan, the lands are designated medium-density residential, which would permit 3-story townhouse housing forms up to a maximum of 50 units per site hectare. The subject lands are located within a defined development block, and specific policies apply which are intended to ensure that the lands located within a development block are developed in a comprehensive manner. The purpose of a development block approach was to ensure that the redevelopment did not occur in a piecemeal fashion and adversely impact non-participating property owners within that development block. It's important to note that all lands within these development blocks have now been either redeveloped in accordance with the livable official plan and or acquired for redevelopment purposes. The site-specific phasing policies are therefore no longer applicable or necessary. With regard to the proposal is to permit a 3-story, 18-unit multiple attached development. A private lane from Garden Drive would provide driveway access to the individual units. The Garden Drive access would be designed as a reverse grade driveway, allowing the parking and laneway to be located underground. A rear yard amenity area would be located at grade and immediately above the laneway and parking. This gives you an idea of some of the elevations, conceptual design elevations. This is looking from Garden Drive, the front facades. This slide shows a cross-section of the conceptual development. You can see from Garden Drive here, there's a 3-story housing form with rooftop amenity space. The vehicular access and driveway are located below grade here. And there's the private amenity space located above the laneway. This slide also shows a plan view of the rooftop, which shows where the private amenity spaces would be located on the rooftop in this location. So each individual unit would have their own amenity area. This is a context map which shows how the development coordinates with the adjacent developments. The memory care development is located to the south, which is 4 stories. This is Lakeshore here. Garden Drive, Maurice and Rebecca. The Windermere condo is to the southeast here. It's a 4-story development. There are townhouses located to the north of the site, 3 stories. The Van Dyke development to the west is a 4-story condominium development. And there's also conceptually shown here, there's the future development to the east, which fronts onto Maurice Drive, which is intended to be a 3-story housing form as well. In terms of the public input, a statutory meeting was held in December of last year, at which time no members of the public spoke to the application. However, during the course of processing the applications, issues related to density and design were further discussed, resulting in revisions to the plan. The number of units has been reduced from 20 to 18, and design modifications were undertaken to the front facade. In terms of the zoning bylaw, the site-specific zoning bylaw has been established for the purpose of accommodating the conceptual design of the proposal. The basic principles of the zoning bylaw are that a maximum of 18 units would be permitted, an increase to the rear yard setback from 6 meters to 14 meters, a reduction in the maximum building height from 14 meters to 13.2, and that would be inclusive of rooftop mechanical equipment, and also to permit a minimum frontage of 4 meters where 5 meters is required, and establish a northerly side yard setback of 1.2 meters where 2 meters is required, and also to permit the uncovered private rooftop amenity areas for each individual unit. There continues to be a holding provision within the zoning bylaw, which continues to apply and would be removed at such time arrangements with respect to servicing infrastructure have been made to the satisfaction of the region. And also that staff are satisfied that the redevelopment of the lands can be undertaken in a coordinated manner with the adjacent lands. In conclusion, staff are of the opinion that the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment to permit the 3-story 18-unit development is appropriate for the subject lands for the following reasons. Planning policies currently recognize the site as an underutilized land use with the potential for intensification. A 3-story housing form is consistent with the vision for the lands and is compatible with the adjacent land uses. The development has been designed in a manner in keeping with the approved urban design guidelines, and the lands within the development block have been acquired for redevelopment purposes, and the lands can be developed in a manner which complements and coordinates with the future development to the east. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Heinz. Are there questions? Councillor Dudek, perhaps? Councillor Demoff? Are there members of the public with information for council on this matter? Is there a member of council with a motion? Councillor Dudek?
Pleased to move it.
Thank you. Is that okay? Okay. All in favor? Opposed, if any? And that carries. Thank you, everyone. And now, with a great deal of pleasure, I would call to the podium Dorothy St. George, our Director of Economic Development, and her Economic Development 2013 Annual Report. Ms. St. George, we're all ears.
Good evening, Mayor Burton, members of council. It's a pleasure to present the 2013 annual report from the Economic Development Department. Copies of the report are being distributed to you. You will be receiving a more polished print version of the report in about a week's time, but the content will remain the same. The report will also be available online on the town's website tomorrow. We compile this report for 2 major reasons. The first is to provide council with an update regarding economic activity in the community over the last year, and to tell you the story about what's behind the numbers. The second is to create a marketing document for investment attraction purposes. And Oakville was the recipient of international and national economic development marketing awards for the 2011 and 2012 annual reports. So we hope that that trend continues. The theme of this year's report is opportunity, opportunities that we can provide new businesses as a location for investment, as well as opportunities our existing companies have to continue to grow their businesses. I'll outline for you both the successes over the last year and the challenges that companies face going forward. Last year, there was a shift away from the office development that dominated 2012 toward projects on the commercial side. 2013 saw over 900,000 square feet of new commercial development, and we welcomed a number of high-profile companies into their new spaces in 2013, resulting in over 900 new jobs. The commercial construction included approximately 65,000 square feet of office space in the Great Lakes Business Park. It also included a 41,000 square foot Lexus dealership on the North Service Road. It included a skydiving simulator called iFly, which broke ground in 2013 and is expected to open in Q2 of this year. The company plans to attract more than 60,000 visitors in its first year alone. Of the 900 new jobs in Oakville, 400 relate to PwC moving into their office on Davis Road. Another 300 people from Manulife Securities moved into their new head office in 3 floors of a retrofitted building on the North Service Road. Other new and expanding companies are listed on page 9 of the annual report, including head offices of Baffin Land, which is an iron ore exploration company, Gemdeo, which offers IT solutions for smart TVs, and David Roberts Food Corporation. And now I'm going to highlight some of the numbers for 2013. These tables show the construction value in square footage of building permits issued last year. For commercial development, the top line on these charts, there was over $52 million in new construction and over $58 million in alterations and improvements. There were no new industrial developments in 2013 and only modest activity in alterations and improvements. The largest number you see on the screen, not surprisingly, relates to the construction of the new Oakville Hospital. Comparing the 2013 numbers to other years helps put them in perspective. And this graph shows the commercial activity over the last 7 years for both new construction as well as alterations and improvements. So there's a few things to note here. The 2013 figure is slightly above the 7-year average for commercial activity, and it's higher than the 2012 value. 2012 saw higher values in new construction, whereas 2013 saw higher values on the alterations and improvements side. And while the 2011 number is higher than both 2012 and 13, should be noted that that included $43 million for the GO Transit parking garage. So it was a substantial part of that 2011 activity. This graph shows 7 years of activity for industrial development, and the spike in 2007 was development in Winston Park, and the major driver in the spike in 2010 was the construction of the Oakville Transit facility. Aside from those 2 years, industrial activity has been fairly consistent but low. And you'll recall from the previous slide that commercial activity for 2013 was $111 million. Here for industrial, it is just $14 million. So it's clear where the development's happening. This graph shows the annual square footage of new construction, as opposed to the previous graphs, which showed construction value. So what is this chart telling us? On the commercial side, the red line, the peaks and valleys reflect the market cycle for office and commercial development. We experienced a great deal of office development in 2011, followed by a slower period of new construction as vacancies were filled. In 2013, much of the new construction was for restaurants and retail to service the previously built office developments. We can expect to see further growth in the office market and more of these fluctuations in development. On the industrial side, we are not experiencing growth, which is not an uncommon situation in many municipalities as traditional manufacturing moves to lower-cost jurisdictions. The opportunity for growth on the industrial side is where manufacturing intersects knowledge-based industries, like sciences, life sciences, or IT. Oakville-based Alphora Research is a prime example. It's a contract research organization providing analytical research for biotech and pharmaceutical companies. But they also have manufacturing capabilities, and they're developing drugs for clinical trials. They're currently running 3 shifts in their operation on Winston Park, employing 85 people in the field of chemical engineering. Oakville's ability to attract new non-residential investment is an important factor in the town's economic sustainability. Land values, development charges, and taxes are 3 of the major costs investors consider in their site selection analysis. The annual report gives you detail on pages 21 to 23 regarding how Oakville fares on each of these factors across 25 municipalities in the GTA. Overall, Oakville is well positioned on the commercial side, but less competitive on the industrial side. So we've taken these 3 major cost factors and wrapped them up into some scenarios for you. On the left side, you'll see a commercial scenario. So for example, a 152,000 square foot office building, similar to a Siemens or a PricewaterhouseCoopers. Development charges are in gray, land values in blue, and the taxes on the top in orange. You'll notice in the commercial scenario, it's the land costs that are actually driving the big variances between municipalities. Another observation is that there's a much smaller variance in these costs across municipalities for the industrial scenario. However, we do know that it's harder for industrial development to absorb these costs given market rents. So whether you're in Burlington or Mississauga or Oakville, the relative overall cost of industrial development is considered high. We don't expect to see a lot of growth in this area. The lack of industrial growth also signals to us to pay attention to our existing industry base for business and retention. Manufacturers face challenges from global competition, technological changes that render their products or processes obsolete, labor availability, energy costs, and the need for more capital investment to become more productive. When you consider these manufacturing challenges, the announcement of Ford last September to invest $700 million in its Oakville assembly plant is likely the most significant impact of the year for the Oakville business community. This investment creates a global platform that will allow Ford to expand its manufacturing capability to meet global demand. And it's significant because this investment secured more than 2,800 jobs at the Oakville plant. You don't have to look far to see newspaper and industry reports about vehicle production moving into the southern US and Mexico. And when that happens, suppliers follow. These major corporate decisions have enormous impacts on communities. So Ford's investment here in Oakville means that these direct jobs and their tenfold multiplier are here to stay. Another important asset in our community that will assist business retention and expansion is Sheridan College. Sheridan's vision to become a university involves the delivery of a broader base of applied learning for its students. In doing so, Sheridan is building the expertise to meet future demands of industry. As well, the applied research program at Sheridan provides the business community a resource to help solve problems that they face. Overall, we are seeing growth in employment in the knowledge-based sectors that we want to attract. 1,200 new jobs in 2012, 900 new jobs in 2013, and that's just the major developments. We are implementing our marketing strategy. Last year, we were successful in getting a federal grant that helped us to develop an online tool to customize information documents. That tool provides information for investors that we may never know about who are searching our website for information. We use it also internally for our use in preparing site selection proposals. Last year, we also helped companies in Oakville to expand their global reach through an Oakville China Business Forum. With respect to business retention, Mayor Burton chaired the caucus of the Ontario Auto Mayors, and they worked with industry, government, and academia on the auto sector to examine opportunities to sustain and grow the sector. This year, we will continue this work and look at expanding the scope to a broader industrial strategy. The Oakville Chamber of Commerce has also been undertaking consultations with industry and with the Canadian and Ontario Chambers of Commerce for the industrial sector, and will work with the Chamber on a cohesive plan. We have also started planning for an Innovation Awards program to recognize the technological strengths and innovations in our local companies. Councillor Adams has been instrumental in bringing together stakeholders for this event. We'll continue throughout 2014 to implement the town's economic development strategy and help foster a favorable environment for the continued success of the business community. And that concludes my presentation, Council. I would like to recognize Alison Newton in our department. She stepped in when our marketing research officer moved on to another position, just as we were getting ready to compile all the information for this report. So it was Alison who put together all the information and put together the document that you see before you today. I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you very much for the report, and thank you, Allison, for your hard work on it. And thank you, Dorothy, for your excellent presentation of it. Councillor Bird would like to ask you a question.
Yeah, I just, and twice in your comment, your presentation, it was great, by the way. You used the term PricewaterhouseCoopers. Now, you're aware that that building has been sold and acquired by Algonquin Power?
Yes, I am.
With the intent of moving their head office in that building as well?
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, there is additional space in that facility to accommodate both offices.
So the Price Waterhouse, as I understand it, will become a tenant of Algonquin Power.
That's correct.
In that building. So at this point, so going forward, we may have a hyphenated or refer to it as the Algonquin Power?
Yes, Councillor Bird.
They also have acquired the entire site from Great West, which contained, I think, plans for 2 other buildings?
From First Gulf.
Part of Great West, First Gulf. So that's a work in progress, and I've got the current vice chair of the board has given me his card. He's actually a Oakville resident, so that may help as well. Going forward, you'll be dealing with them with the road alignment and other issues, so it's nice to have another head office established in Oakville.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. I saw another hand, Councillor Knoll.
A quick question, Your Worship. I'm just curious, how is the site selection database going? I haven't heard much about that in the last little while. Has that been a successful initiative? Are real estate agents and economic development officers using it, or where do we stand on that particular project?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we are working with our SBS group in the Community Development Division. We've been exploring the site selection tools that are available in other municipalities, looking at connecting it with the ICX database for realtors so that rather than inputting data ourselves or relying on realtors to input data, we're actually connecting to an existing feed. To answer your question, the process is underway for upgrading and providing a more robust site selection tool, and we hope to have that completed this year.
So that tool will be available, I guess, geocoded to Oakville on our website? Is that the idea?
Yes, that's correct.
So we'll be essentially skinning their product and putting it on our site with Oakville as the only search variable, yeah?
Yes, that's correct.
That sounds like a better plan than trying to duplicate the process that I think was originally contemplated. Okay, well done, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. If there are no other questions, I would be looking for a motion to receive the report. Councillor Grant, thank you for that. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Council, you have 4 confidential items, and you have your advisory committee minutes. Is there a need to go in camera on these confidential items, or are you able to make a motion in public? Councillor Johnston.
I'll move the staff recommendations on all four.
Thank you. All right, we are going to do that in two steps. First, we're going to vote on C1 so that Councillor Adams can push back and not participate. All those in favor of Councillor Johnston's motion on C1, please signify your agreement. That wasn't a very high hand raise, but would you do it again? Those against? That does carry after all. Thank you. And now, on the balance, C2, C3, and C4, Councillor Adams rejoining us. All those in favor? All those against? And they carry as well. Council, I turn your attention to your Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee minutes and the addendum that was distributed. Councillor Dudek?
I'd be pleased to move the revised recommendation, having been at the meeting when it was discussed at length. I fully agree with what our Parks and Rec staff have made. A slight revision on one item that was contained in the report. Other than that, it's all being in keeping with what the committee wanted.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Madam Clerk, is that sufficient for your purposes? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. We need a motion to rise and report to Council. Councillor Demuth, thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. I rise and report that Council has met in Committee of the Whole and made decisions on public hearing items 1, 2, and 3, and on the referred item from Monday night. Also discussion items 4 and 5, and confidential discussion items C1, 2, 3, and 4, and the advisory committee minutes. May I have a mover and seconder for this report? Councillor Elgar and Councillor Robinson, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? The report is adopted. Mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws would be in order. Councillor Knoll, Councillor Johnston. This is authority for the bylaws listed on the agenda and the confirmatory bylaw. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Those are adopted. Thank you very much for your time and attention. It's been great working with you, and we are adjourned.